The kingdom in darkness. The kingdom was dying. It had once been a land of bright skies and golden towers. Now the skies were filled with smoke. The towers were broken and silent. The streets that once sang with laughter were now quiet with fear. The royal family lived in the palace, but even they had lost their hope. The king sat on his throne with eyes empty. The queen prayed every night, but her prayers seemed lost. The princes and princesses hid behind stone walls, too afraid to face the world outside. The people whispered. They whispered about the end. They whispered that no army could save them. They whispered that their kingdom was only waiting to die. Every day felt like the last day. The reason was clear. The kingdom was under the shadow of an alien race. They came from the stars with ships made of fire. They crushed the royal soldiers as if they were dust. They walked through the palace gates without fear. They sat in the throne room and laughed at the broken king. The aliens called themselves the KRYTH. They were tall, with gray skin and burning red eyes. Their armor shone like black stone. Their weapons could tear through walls with a single strike. To the people, they seemed like demons. To the royal family, they seemed like gods of death. The KRYTH ruled with terror. Anyone who resisted was taken. Anyone who spoke against them vanished. At night, families hid their children, afraid the KRYTH would take them for labor. Hope had no place in such a world. But stories have a way of living even in the darkest times. In the markets, in the ruins, people told each other a shadow that moved at night, a shadow that struck small blows against the KRYTH. At first, no one believed, but the whispers grew, and soon the shadow had a name. This name was not known by the royal family. They no longer cared for rumors. They no longer cared for hope. But among the people, this name was spoken softly. The name was human. The name belonged to a girl who refused to kneel. She had no crown. She had no sword of the king. She had no army. What she had was fire inside her heart. When she looked at the KRYTH, she did not see gods. She saw murderers. She saw thieves who had stolen her home. Her story began in silence. She was born in the lower district, far from the palace walls. Her family was simple, living from day to day. When the KRYTH came, her father was taken. Her mother died in the first fires, and she was left alone. But even alone, she did not bow. At night, she wandered the ruins. She learned the secret ways of the streets. She watched the enemy soldiers. She listened to their voices. She learned their patterns. And when the time was right, she struck. Her first strike was small. A stolen knife through the throat of a KRYTH guard. Her hands shook with fear. Her heart burned with rage. But when the guard fell, she felt something she had not felt before. She felt power. Not the power of kings or armies, but the power of one human refusing to die. The next night, she struck again. This time, she freed prisoners, weak men, tired women, and crying children. She broke their chains and told them to run. Her voice was calm, her eyes bright. And for the first time, the people believed the whispers. The KRYTH searched for her. They called her a traitor, a rat, a ghost. They promised to crush her. They set traps. They burned homes. They punished the weak. But they never caught her. She was always one step ahead. Back in the palace, the king heard nothing. The queen's prayers grew longer but colder. The princes dreamed of escape. The princesses waited for rescue. They did not know that rescue would never come from the stars. It would come from the ground, from the streets, from a girl with no crown. And so the story began. A kingdom that had lost all hope. A royal family too blind to fight. And one human girl, nameless to many, but destined to be remembered by all. Her life was nothing. Her weapons were few. Yet her courage was endless. In the dark kingdom, she was the first spark of light. The forgotten prisoner. Deep inside the enemy's stronghold, hidden under the ruins of the old fortress, there was a place no one spoke about. A place of chains, darkness, and silence. Here, the KRYTH kept their prisoners. Most were broken long ago, their spirits crushed, their bodies weak. But one prisoner was different. She was not royalty, not a soldier, not a famous leader. To the KRYTH, she was nothing more than a number, a body in chains. But when she lifted her head, when her eyes opened in the dark, there was something inside them the KRYTH could not kill. Her body was thin, her lips dry, her back scarred by whips. Yet her eyes still burned with fire. Every day, the guards laughed at her. They threw stale bread at her feet. They mocked her weakness. They told her she would die in the dark. But she whispered the same words every night. I will not die here. Her voice was quiet, but the walls carried it like a secret prayer. The other prisoners listened. Some shook their heads, too broken to believe. Others felt something stir in their hearts, something they thought they had lost. Hope, but they dared not speak. For the KRYTH had ears everywhere. The girl had no weapon, no army, no key, but she had her mind. While others cried, she studied the guards. She counted their steps. She watched how their armor clicked when they turned. She noticed the sound of keys, the shift of locks, the time of patrols. Every detail was a map in her mind. One night, as the moons hung low and the fortress walls groaned with the cold, she made her first move. She pressed a loose stone in the wall. Inside, it was hidden a small piece of metal she had stolen weeks ago from a broken chain. She had waited for this moment. Her hand shook as she worked the lock on her shackles. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper. Then the shackle fell open. Her wrists were free. Her heart raced. But she did not scream. She did not run. She looked at the other prisoners. Some stared in shock, some in fear, some with sudden hope. She whispered again, I will not die here. And this time, her voice was stronger. One man begged her to free him. A mother wept, asking for her child. But the girl knew she could not save everyone that night. The KRYTH would notice, the guard would strike. She had to choose, and she chose silence. She promised herself she would return. She moved like a shadow through the tunnels. The guards were loud, their boots heavy, their laughter cruel. They did not see her slip behind them. They did not hear her breath as she pressed against the cold stone. Step by step, she reached the outer gate. There, two KRYTH stood watch, their red eyes glowing. Her heart pounded. If they saw her, it was over. But fate was with her. Above, a storm rolled across the sky. Lightning split the clouds. Thunder shook the walls. The guards looked up for only a moment, and in that moment, she ran. Her bare feet hit the wet earth, her breath sharp in her chest. She did not look back. She ran until the fortress was a shadow behind her. The KRYTH discovered her escape at dawn. Their screams filled the prison halls. The prisoners were beaten, chained tighter, left without food. The guards swore to find her. But among the prisoners, something had changed. They remembered her whisper, I will not die here. And for the first time in many years, they believed someone might come back for them. The girl hid in the ruins of the city. Her body was weak, her stomach empty, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. She had escaped the place where hope had been buried. She had seen the faces of the broken, the forgotten, and she knew she could not rest. Her fight was not only for herself anymore. It was for them, for all who had no voice, for all who were chained in the dark. The KRYTH spread her name with anger. They called her traitor, rat, ghost. But among the people, the whispers grew louder. She was no longer just a shadow. She was the forgotten prisoner who defied death, the human who dared to fight back. And in the palace, still blind to the fire spreading in their land, the royal family remained in silence. They did not know that far beyond their walls, hope had risen from chains, and the war for their kingdom had already begun. The spark of rebellion. The KRYTH thought the girl's escape meant nothing. They called her a pest, a mistake, a shadow that would soon be crushed. But in the ruins, in the streets, the people whispered her name. They whispered about the prisoner who broke her chains. They whispered about the girl who dared to fight. At first, it was only stories. Children whispered at night before sleep. Old men spoke softly in the markets. Women told their children not to forget. A name without a face, a hope without a crown. But hope is a dangerous seed. Once planted, it can grow anywhere. The girl did not rest. She moved through the ruins at night, silent and unseen. She struck at lone guards. She stole food from enemy stores. She cut the chains of prisoners and vanished into the shadows. Every act was small, but to the people, every act was a fire in the dark. The KRYTH became restless. They sent patrols through the city. They beat the weak. They burned homes. They swore to catch the shadow. But the harder they tried, the brighter the fire grew, because now the people began to move. A baker refused to serve the enemy. A farmer hid food for rebels. A child carried messages through tunnels. Each one was a small spark, and together the sparks became flame. The royal family still sat in silence. The king stared at his broken throne. The queen still prayed, but no longer believed. The princes dreamed of faraway lands. The princesses wept behind closed doors. They did not see that outside their walls, their people were changing. They did not see that rebellion was being born. The girl saw it. She watched the eyes of the people. She saw the way they stood a little taller when they spoke of her. She saw the way fear turned into courage. She knew she could not stay in the shadows forever. If rebellion was to grow, it needed more than whispers. It needed a voice. One night, she stood in the middle of the broken market. The stars above were hidden by smoke. The ground was wet with ash. The people gathered, afraid yet curious. They knew the KRYEH would kill them if they were caught. But still they came. Still they listened. The girl stepped forward. Her clothes were torn, her body thin, but her eyes burned with fire. She spoke in a voice steady and strong. "We have lived in fear too long," she said. "They think we are broken, but we are not. They think we will kneel, but we will not. We are human, and we will fight." The crowd was silent at first. Mothers held their children close. Men looked away. But then one old man lifted his fist. "For her," he said. A woman shouted, "For us." And then the crowd roared, "For freedom." The sound shook the air. It spread through the streets like thunder. The KRYTH patrols heard it and ran. But the people did not run. They stood together. They were no longer whispers. They were a voice. The girl had lit the fire. The spark of rebellion was alive. The KRYEH would try to crush it. The royals would try to ignore it. But the people had changed. They had seen courage in human form. They had seen a prisoner break her chains. And they knew they could break theirs too. That night, the rebellion was born. Not with kings, not with armies, not with crowns, but with a nameless girl. A human who chose to fight when all others had given up. And in the shadows, the KRYEH began to fear. For they had seen many battles. But never before had they faced the fire of human hope. The broken throne. The palace was silent. The golden halls that once echoed with music now carried only the sound of footsteps. Dust covered the carpets. Spider webs clung to the windows. The royal banners still hung, but they were torn, faded, and stained with ash. The king sat on his throne, but the throne was broken. One of its arms was shattered, its jewels stolen, its shine gone. He looked less like a king and more like a tired old man. His crown rested heavy on his head, yet it gave him no power. His eyes were dull, staring at the floor as if waiting for death. The queen knelt in the palace chapel. Her lips whispered prayers, but her heart no longer believed. Every night, she begged the stars for a savior. But no savior came. Only more fire, only more death. The princes wandered the palace halls like ghosts. One dreamed of escape, of leaving the kingdom behind. Another drowned himself in drink, trying to forget. The youngest stared at maps, planning battles he would never fight. They were born to lead, but now they only waited for the end. The princesses wept in silence. They sat near broken mirrors, staring at faces pale with fear. They remembered songs of beauty and hope, but their voices no longer sang. They hid behind silk curtains, afraid of the world beyond the walls. afraid of what the KRYDH would do if they broke inside. The palace was a cage. The royals were prisoners of their own fear. They could not see beyond the walls. They did not know that outside something had changed. They did not know that rebellion had begun. They did not know that hope was alive. The king called his council, old men with gray beards, voices weak and trembling. "What shall we do?" the king asked. No one answered. Finally, one whispered, "We wait. Perhaps the KRYEH will leave." The king closed his eyes, and for the first time, he thought death would be kinder. But the palace walls could not keep out whispers. Even within the golden halls, servants carried news. They spoke of a girl. They spoke of a shadow, a spark, a fire. They spoke of humans who refused to kneel. The royals heard the words, but did not believe. "Stories," said the king. "Lies," said the council. But deep inside, the queen's heart stirred. Could it be true? Could there still be hope? Far from the palace, the girl herself moved closer. She walked among the ruins. She hid among the people. Her name spread like fire on the wind. The people no longer whispered, they shouted. The rebellion was growing, and its light was creeping toward the palace. One night, the king stood alone in the throne room. The moonlight spilled across the broken crown. He remembered when he was young, strong, fearless. He remembered battles won, feasts celebrated. He remembered when his people looked at him with love. Now they looked at him with disappointment. Now they looked to someone else, a stranger, a human girl. The king clenched his fist, but his strength was gone. His heart was weak, his spirit broken. He did not rise from his throne. He did not call his people to arms. He sat, waiting, as if the throne itself had chained him. The broken throne was not only wood and stone. It was a symbol of the kingdom itself, a symbol of weakness, despair, and silence. But outside the walls, another throne was rising, not of gold or jewels, but of courage, of fire, of human will. And one day, the two thrones would meet. The royals did not yet know it, but history had already turned against them. The people no longer waited for kings or queens. They followed the nameless girl, the one who dared to fight when all others surrendered. In the broken palace, the royals clung to fading memories. In the burning streets, the people clung to new hope. And soon, the fire of rebellion would reach the throne room itself, and the royals would be forced to see the truth, that their kingdom was not saved by crowns. It was saved by courage. The broken throne, the palace was silent. The golden halls that once echoed with music now carried only the sound of footsteps. Dust covered the carpets. Spider webs clung to the windows. The royal banners still hung, but they were torn, faded, and stained with ash. The king sat on his throne, but the throne was broken. One of its arms was shattered, its jewels stolen, its shine gone. He looked less like a king and more like a tired old man. His crown rested heavy on his head, yet it gave him no power. His eyes were dull, staring at the floor as if waiting for death. The queen knelt in the palace chapel. Her lips whispered prayers, but her heart no longer believed. Every night, she begged the stars for a savior. But no savior came. Only more fire, only more death. The princes wandered the palace halls like ghosts. One dreamed of escape, of leaving the kingdom behind. Another drowned himself in drink, trying to forget. The youngest stared at maps, planning battles he would never fight. They were born to lead, but now they only waited for the end. The princesses wept in silence. They sat near broken mirrors, staring at faces pale with fear. They remembered songs of beauty and hope, but their voices no longer sang. They hid behind silk curtains, afraid of the world beyond the walls, afraid of what the KRYDH would do if they broke inside. The palace was a cage. The royals were prisoners of their own fear. They could not see beyond the walls. They did not know that outside something had changed. They did not know that rebellion had begun. They did not know that hope was alive. The king called his council, old men with gray beards, voices weak and trembling. "What shall we do?" the king asked. No one answered. Finally, one whispered, "We wait. Perhaps the KRYEH will leave." The king closed his eyes, and for the first time, he thought death would be kinder. But the palace walls could not keep out whispers. Even within the golden halls, servants carried news. They spoke of a girl. They spoke of a shadow, a spark, a fire. They spoke of humans who refused to kneel. The royals heard the words, but did not believe. "Stories," said the king. "Lies," said the council. But deep inside, the queen's heart stirred. Could it be true? Could there still be hope? Far from the palace, the girl herself moved closer. She walked among the ruins. She hid among the people. Her name spread like fire on the wind. The people no longer whispered, they shouted. The rebellion was growing, and its light was creeping toward the palace. One night, the king stood alone in the throne room. The moonlight spilled across the broken crown. He remembered when he was young, strong, fearless. He remembered battles won, feasts celebrated. He remembered when his people looked at him with love. Now they looked at him with disappointment. Now they looked to someone else, a stranger, a human girl. The king clenched his fist, but his strength was gone. His heart was weak, his spirit broken. He did not rise from his throne. He did not call his people to arms. He sat, waiting, as if the throne itself had chained him. The broken throne was not only wood and stone. It was a symbol of the kingdom itself, a symbol of weakness, despair, and silence. But outside the walls, another throne was rising, not of gold or jewels, but of courage, of fire, of human will. And one day, the two thrones would meet. The royals did not yet know it, but history had already turned against them. The people no longer waited for kings or queens. They followed the nameless girl, the one who dared to fight when all others surrendered. In the broken palace, the royals clung to fading memories. In the burning streets, the people clung to new hope. And soon, the fire of rebellion would reach the throne room itself, and the royals would be forced to see the truth, that their kingdom was not saved by crowns. It was saved by courage. The final stand. The city burned with fire and hope. The KRYEH had suffered shame. They had been pushed back by humans with no weapons, no armies, no kings, and they could not allow such defiance to live. At dawn, their warships filled the sky. Their engines roared like thunder. Their shadows swallowed the light. The ground shook as machines of death rolled into the streets. The air screamed with the cry of alien horns. The final strike had begun. The people gathered in the ruins. Men with sticks, women with stones, children carrying nothing but courage. They were broken in body, but alive in spirit. They looked to the girl, their leader, their spark, their fire. And she stood before them, her blade in hand, her voice strong. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think we will kneel. But today we show them who we are." Her voice rose above the roar of the engines. "We are human, and we will not die silent." The people answered with a cry that shook the ground. The flame of rebellion burned brighter than the fires of war. The KRYEH marched forward, armored like giants. Their commander, taller than all, with eyes red as blood. He raised his blade of fire and pointed at the girl. "Kill her," he roared, for he knew that if she fell, the fire might fade. The battle began like a storm. Blades clashed, stones flew, fire tore through the streets. Humans fell, KRYEH roared. The city shook with death and life together. Yet still the people stood, still they fought. The girl moved through the chaos like a shadow of light. She struck fast, cut chains, freed prisoners even as war raged. Everywhere she went, the people fought harder, for they saw her not as one, but as all of them. She was their voice, their courage, their hope. The KRYEH commander sought her, his armor black, his sword blazing. He cut down men and women alike. Searching, finally, he found her standing on the broken steps of the palace. Her face streaked with ash, her blade cracked. Yet her eyes burned brighter than his fire. "You are nothing," he growled, "a child playing at war." But the girl did not bow. She raised her blade, though her hands trembled. "I am human," she said, "and that is enough." They clashed, her blade against his fire, her courage against his strength. Every strike shook the stones, every clash lit the night. She was small, fast, desperate. He was strong, ruthless, merciless. The battle between them was more than steel. It was the fight between despair and hope, between silence and defiance. The commander struck her down once. Her body hit the ground, blood on her lips. The people cried out, fear rising. But she pushed herself up, her knees shaking, her voice breaking. "If I fall, fight on," she whispered. The people roared again, louder, stronger. Their voices gave her strength. She rose, her cracked blade lifted high, and in one final strike, she drove it through the commander's chest. The fire in his eyes dimmed. His roar turned into silence. The great HFY commander fell, and with him, the army faltered. The people surged forward. They struck the HFY with stones, with blades, with fire. The aliens stumbled, broken without their leader. The war machines burned. The warships fled into the clouds. And for the first time in years, the sky cleared. The city stood free. The girl fell to her knees. Her blade broken, her body weak, but her eyes still burned with fire. The people rushed to her. They lifted her high. They chanted her name. Not shadow, not prisoner, not ghost. Leader, savior, human. The final stand had ended. The HFY had been defeated. Not by kings, not by armies, not by crowns, but by the will of one girl, by the fire of many hearts, by the spirit of humans who refused to kneel. When hope returned, the battle was over. Smoke rose from the streets, the air heavy with the smell of fire and blood. Bodies of the fallen lay among ruins, both human and HFY. But in the silence that followed, there was no cry of despair. There was only the sound of voices rising. The people stood together, tired, wounded, but alive. They looked to the broken palace, once a symbol of despair. Now it stood as witness to their victory. The royal family watched from shattered windows, their eyes wide, their lips trembling. They had done nothing, yet their kingdom had been saved. Saved not by crowns, not by armies, but by their people. At the center of it all, the girl lay in the arms of her followers. Her clothes torn, her skin marked with wounds. Her blade broken, her strength almost gone. But her eyes still burned with the same fire. She whispered, her voice weak, but steady. "You are free." The words spread like the wind. They touched every ear, every heart. Mothers hugged their children. Fathers lifted their fists. Children cried with joy they did not understand. Freedom had returned, and it came not from the heavens, but from their own hands. The king walked out at last, his crown heavy, his robes torn. He looked at the people, at the fire in their eyes. He saw the girl, small yet greater than any throne, and he wept, not for his kingdom, but for his shame. He had given up when she had fought. He had surrendered when she had risen. And he knew history would not remember him. It would remember her. The queen knelt beside the girl. Her tears fell onto the broken blade. "You saved us," she whispered. But the girl shook her head. "No," she said, her eyes on the people. "They saved themselves." The crowd cheered. The sound rolled across the city like thunder. It reached the mountains, the rivers, the skies. It was not the cry of subjects for their king. It was the cry of a people who had taken back their world. That night, the city lit fires not of war, but of celebration. Songs filled the streets again, laughter returned. Children danced where ashes still lay, and the broken throne remained empty, for no one cared to see a king upon it. They only cared for the fire they had found inside themselves. The girl sat among them. She did not wear a crown. She did not hold a sword. She smiled as the people sang, her body weak, her soul strong. She knew her fight was not only for this city. Beyond the stars, the HFY still lived, still waited. But she also knew this. When humans stand, no empire can hold them down. Hope had returned. not as a gift from royals, not as mercy from gods, but as the spirit of a single human who chose to fight. Her name would be carried in stories, her face remembered in songs. Generations would whisper of the day one girl lit a fire against the stars. The royal palace remained in ruins, the broken throne a monument to the past. But in the hearts of the people, a new throne was built. Not of stone, not of gold, but of courage, of unity, of defiance. And upon it sat not one, but all of them. For the kingdom was theirs again. And so, when the story of that day was told, it did not begin with kings. It did not end with crowns. It began with despair and ended with fire. The fire of one human girl who fought when all others had lost hope. The fire that became a rising flame. The fire that returned hope to a dying world.